Hey, friends, welcome back into Behind the Bearcats. Today, a very special guest as we look into kickoff coming up here on September the 2nd, right around the corner. And joining us today is Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU, the Cougars. And Greg, man, appreciate your time today and looking forward to getting to know a little bit about you. How are things going there in Provo?
Things are going great. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, Greg, man, I was doing a little bit of research. Our first year and y'all's first year now moving into the Big 12. You've been with BYU Radio, and if any of this is incorrect, correct me. But I believe since 1992, you've seen many seasons unfold. When you think about the anticipation of this 2023 season, maybe compared to previous years, what do you really see, especially given this matchup versus Sam Houston? It's an exciting time for both of these programs.
Yeah, I don't know what can compare to a first season as a P5 and a first season in the Big 12 Conference. There have been anticipated seasons and great season openers and a lot of big first games over time as BYU used to really have to front load its independent schedule with a lot of P5s in September. So there have been, highly anticipated season openers, but I think taken from an overall perspective, a big picture for this season being the first in the Big 12, tough to find anything that quite matches it. And so the game BYU plays against Sam Houston will be BYU's first football game with a Big 12 patch on the jersey. And that's important.
Well, I know there's got to be a lot of excitement, for us here in Huntsville and throughout Bearcat Nation moving to the FBS, a lot of excitement. What's the atmosphere like right now in Provo with this awesome move coming up to the Big 12 for you guys?
Well, a long time in coming, and it was 12 years of independence, but certainly the foundation was laid well beyond that 12-year stint of the independence era. Lavelle Edwards kind of built something special here in Provo, and when Lavelle was coaching, it was the WAC, from the WAC to the Mountain West, from the Mountain West to Independence now to Big 12. It was a long time in coming, and a lot of people again put down the bricks that ultimately built the structure that now enters the Big 12. And so you could argue that, independence was the last step, but a lot of steps were taken before that. And a lot of people are due credit, and Lavelle is first and foremost, I think. And, turning BYU into a name, making it a quarterback factory, a national championship, a Heisman Trophy, so many national award winners. Just the name BYU says something to college football fans. And so all those things taken together made BYU a good fit and a reasonable, logical choice when it was time for the Big 12 to expand once OU and UT left. And I think Brett Yormark made the comment yesterday. He's, of course, the Big 12 commissioner that, what he was able to get done by jumping in front of the Pac-12 in line to get that ESPN Fox deal done when he did, and that was really the key to this whole thing. He said he wasn't sure that they'd be able to do that if they hadn't brought in BYU, Cincy, UCF, and Houston. So BYU was part of that move that really solidified the Big 12 to then make it into a position of strength to bring in four more teams that we'll see next year and put the Big 12 in a really good spot. But going back to all of it, BYU is kind of key in that whole equation.
Some definitely exciting times for sure, and really excited about September the 2nd coming up as the Bearcats head there to Provo. When you're looking at this current BYU squad, and just to give our fans a little perspective, what are you kind of seeing so far? Maybe some of the strengths that the Cougars most likely looking to leverage against Sam Houston, and maybe any key players that are already coming alive here that you see coming up this season?
Well, I'll go with a quote that BYU's offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick gave the other night, and that is he felt that BYU was improved at every position on offense. He quickly said, now maybe at quarterback it's a wash with Keaton Slovis coming in, Jaron Hall going out. Jaron was an NFL draft pick of the Vikings, so that was a pretty good position to start with there. So for Aaron to say that everyone's better than they were at every spot says a lot, with maybe a wash at quarterback as you're replacing an NFL draft pick. But that's where I think BYU leans is the offensive side. Defense will be a work in progress. They've already suffered a season-ending injury in the defensive backfield. You never want to see that in camp, and it's invariable. I think it's inevitable these days, and it seems to happen every year where a big injury happens in camp. It's happened again. And with a new defensive coordinator and a lot of room to make up, I think defensively, statistically, I think the Cougars will likely lean on the offense being the strength of this team, especially early on and maybe throughout the season. I think that BYU can expect to be very good on offense, but needs to be better on defense. The stats were not there. The rankings were not there. They made changes, new defensive coordinator, new defensive coaches. That's where BYU has to make the most improvement, I think, to be a P5 caliber competitor here in 2023.
One of the things I always like to ask last, but I'm going to ask first here just to get it out of the way because there is that excitement level building that I've talked about and you've mentioned. Just the stadium atmosphere for Bearcat fans. There's going to be some that are traveling there, maybe tuning in remotely. What do you really think they can expect from that atmosphere at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, especially with this first game underway? And are there any special traditions that our fans should be aware of?
Well, I think first and foremost, you're going to recognize and appreciate the view you get with the mountains looming to the east behind the stands. It's a gorgeous setting for college football, and I think as BYU's entered the Big 12, more and more photos have circulated of LaVell Edwards Stadium, and more talk about the game day atmosphere. I think hospitality. If you talk about traditions, hospitality is something I think that visiting fans will notice right off the top how they're welcomed into the stadium. They're handed ice cream in the stadium once they get to their seats. The Cougar Tail is a maple donut, like a foot and a half long. That's kind of a big tradition for people to get at the stadium. There's some things like that on a game day that go a long way. Cougar Canyon is the street festival to the west of the stadium, right next to it, that gets a lot of play as well. There are some great things about game day, but the setting, I think, primarily is what knocks people's socks off when they get to Provo and just see how beautiful it is. What a great place to play a game. It's a crowd of 60,000 plus, should be sold out. It'll be the biggest stadium in the Big 12 once OU and Texas leave. It's a great game day facility, and it's been that way for a lot of years, about 40 years of the expanded stadium. And I think there's no better place to call a game. I'm clearly biased, but I never take for granted the view I get out those gorgeous windows over the mountain backdrop. Nothing beats it.
Again, Greg Wrubell joining us. He is the voice of the Cougars. Appreciate his time here on Behind the Bearcats. First time I believe these two teams have ever met up, and there's always mutual respect between programs. It doesn't matter if you've met one time or 100 times in the past, but have you really just seen anybody on the Sam Houston side, maybe from a coaching perspective or even a player or position side that you're already keeping your eye out on as far as the Bearcats go?
Well, the offensive skill players that they were able to redshirt last year in that season to kind of save them for this year. I think they immediately jump out. I want to see how quarterback settles in for Sam Houston. There's an offensive coordinator there that has coached against BYU in the past. When Brad Cornelson was at Memphis, he was the quarterbacks coach for Paxton Lynch in a game that Memphis played against BYU, the Miami Beach Bowl, and Memphis won that game, and he was on the staff. He's now back against BYU, different role, but was doing a lot of the same things back then. So those are a few things, and of course, once we get to this weekend, we'll start drilling down a little more deeply on Sam Houston personnel. We see a depth chart maybe a week after that, and get a sense of really who will be out there. But I do know that tactically, what Coach Keeler did with keeping guys available with a redshirt year, I think is a big part of how he plans to head into the FBS here in 2023.
I know we still got a couple of weeks out. You're still gathering in information just as we are. But really, when you look at the BYU side, what does BYU have to do in this game to be successful against a Sam Houston team that's hungry for their first win to get opening in the FBS?
I think it'll come down to efficiency. That is, Aaron Roderick wants to keep his red zone and red zone touchdown number high. The number of plays may go down because of the new clock rules. And I think in one sense, A-Rod, the offensive coordinator, Aaron Roderick, we call him A-Rod, is hoping for more possessions, but it'll be hard to do with the new clock rules. Now, what'll help BYU get to that higher possession number from that, 10-11 to 13-14, which is what he really wants to be at, would be a better performance defensively. Shorter stints on the field for the defense, getting the offense more time on the field. I think that will be key. If he can get that possession number up, even with the new clock rules, maybe taking time off, that'll be a sign BYU is doing what it wants to get done. I think ideally, they keep the players they need in the mix for games 2 and 3 and 4. I think getting out of week 1 with full health is maybe as important as anything, and it's tough to do on an opening day situation against a team that's trying to prove itself in the FBS ranks. And so I think an efficient day relative to red zone scoring for BYU on offense and maybe keeping Sam Houston to 21 or fewer defensively would be, I think, things on the to-do list for Jay Hill in game 1.
Pretty unique viewpoint for you as a BYU alum. Again, talking to Greg Wrubell. He is the voice of the Cougars. And just being an alum yourself, you look at a matchup like this against teams maybe with a different football history, a different background in some aspects. How does that really resonate with the alumni such as yourself and the student fan base?
Well, I think people will get quickly educated about the fact that this is an FBS team coming in. They may have been FCS as recently as last year, but it is a step up. And another thing that will resonate is the national championship, a recent national championship, multiple national championships for national titles for the program. These things are important. They have a tradition. They have a meaning. And so Sam Houston comes in with a reputation, a title reputation earned. The step is now up. But again, they've taken steps to make sure they hit the ground running in the FBS, much as BYU took steps to hit the ground running in the P5. That independence era really helped BYU ramp up to P5 membership by playing so many more P5s on a yearly basis. When you're in the G5, you're playing maybe one a year if you're lucky. And in independence, BYU played 4 to 7 P5 opponents a year. So both teams, Sam Houston and BYU, step up a level, but both teams prepared themselves well. Sam Houston by pedigree and by tactical personnel deployment, saving guys their redshirt year, and BYU by playing so many P5s leading into a situation where they'll play 10 consecutive P5s in 2023.
Greg, just one final question. We're going to have just a little bit of fun because we're not going to bring any heat from Texas. I'll promise you that. We're going to try to keep all that back here in East Texas.
It's hot enough here right now. It's in the hundreds right here, and we don't get the humidity, but it's been plenty hot.
What can our fans do? I know we talked a little bit about atmosphere at the actual game, but for fans making that travel, what are some places, maybe some foods they should try, some places that they should go visit, maybe some family activities there in Provo that would be a hot spot for them?
Well, the Sam Houston game's a night game, right? It'll be an evening kickoff on September 2nd. So you've got time during the day. So Lavelle Edwards Stadium sits on Canyon Road. You can take Canyon Road north all the way into Provo Canyon. It's a 5-minute drive. You find yourself in a beautiful canyon. Bridal Veil Falls is an amazing waterfall up the road. Sundance Resort. A lot of folks have heard of Sundance. Is only 10 minutes farther up the road. Get into Provo Canyon, park the car, take a stroll by the river. It's only 5-10 minutes away from the stadium, literally up the canyon. And I think anytime you can spend in the canyon on a September Saturday before a game day, by all means do it. Lots of great restaurants, some local haunts, some great burger joints. There's a place for kind of all types of food downtown called Gurus that I really love. Chom Burgers, CHOM. Chom Burgers, a place I really love. Holy Taco is a place I love to go. You'll find a lot of great places to eat. And again, just the scenery itself will make it a pleasant afternoon before game night in Provo, no doubt.
Well, Greg, man, I appreciate your time. I know that you have a lot going on, and so appreciate you coordinating this brief interview and just letting our folks know a little bit more about Provo and there at BYU. We're excited. Can't wait to get there. And looking forward to this great matchup, not just for you guys opening up the Big 12 for the first time for y'all, but for us moving into the FBS. So, man, Greg, appreciate it and looking forward to it. Have a blessed afternoon, my friend.
Well, it's been a pleasure being with you. Thanks for the conversation. Hopefully, I hit all the bases, and we look forward to having Sam Houston here in Provo on September 2nd.
There he is again, Greg Wrubell, the voice of the Cougars. That game getting underway again September the 2nd. We'll have more content. Keep it locked in right here on Behind the Bearkats.